Being in this business for a hot minute, it occurs to me that whenever people say the following, "Oh, I just have one question about my divorce, it's not going to be contested. I only have a few questions about how to file and all of this sort of thing." A few questions. Well, if you do not understand the process, you have no idea how it works, you've never been through it before, and you've never filled out a divorce document in your entire life, then a few questions is not going to, or a few answers to a few questions is not going to save you, and it is not going to resolve your case. It occurs to me that when people ask those questions or make those requests, what they're really saying is, I believe that I have a simplified dissolution of marriage. Not an uncontested dissolution or uncontested divorce necessarily, but a simplified dissolution of marriage. For those of you who may find yourself in that position, let's take a look at just what a simplified dissolution of marriage is. According to the Florida Supreme Court, you must meet all of the following criteria. You and your spouse agree that the marriage cannot be saved. Well, no kidding. That one is probably commonplace and automatic. You and your spouse have no minor or dependent children together, and your wife is not pregnant. For those of you with minor children together seeking a simplified dissolution of marriage, I cannot imagine any court will grant it, and if they do, it would certainly be a mistake on their part. Next, you and your spouse have worked out how you will divide everything, both your assets and your liabilities. It does not say in that language that you need a marital settlement agreement, does it? No, but it does say you've worked that out. Really, what does that mean? Is there some sort of a hidden verbal agreement, a he said, she said sort of thing? I'm not always comfortable with that. Next, you are not seeking alimony/spousal support from your spouse, and they are not seeking it from you. That is an important distinction. You might think that you do not need any alimony without considering whether or not your spouse intends for you to pay them alimony. This is an important paragraph or clause or piece of advice for those of you. In other words, if you have an otherwise uncontested divorce, you have no property and no children together that are at issue. However, there is alimony involved, then that is an uncontested divorce if you can still do it amicably, not a simplified dissolution of marriage. Next, you are willing to give up your right to trial and appeal. Wow, that's really unique. If you do a simplified dissolution of marriage, then not only are you not having a trial where the judge or the court would divide your assets and liabilities, you are also forfeiting your right to an appeal. In other words, you're saying that there's no property. You're saying that there's absolutely nothing under contest here, and you're swearing to it under oath and allowing a final judgment to be issued stating that. Next, you and your spouse are both willing to go into the clerk's office to sign the petition. Okay. Can that be done electronically? Well, one would assume so. There could realistically be an update to the laws. Really, in 2020, when COVID hit, practically everything became a Microsoft Teams or a Zoom contest or a Zoom hearing or a Zoom trial or a Zoom meeting or a Zoom consultation. Zoom. We're all driving a Mazda, apparently. Point being that you have to sign certain documents, including the petition. You probably should still notarize certain documents. You do not have to do it together, but that going into the clerk's office, I believe that this is intended also for people that are pro se doing it on their own, not necessarily for those with competent counsel who can handle every step of the process for you, with you, competently, quickly, and efficiently. Finally, you and your spouse are both willing to go to the final hearing at the same time. There seems to be some disagreement over this, and I've recently encountered some. While I cannot get into that because it involves cases that we've worked on, previously, 5 or more years ago, it was common that only the petitioner would need to go if this were an uncontested case. Only the petitioner would need to go to court to provide jurisdictional testimony and to inform the court that all agreements had been reached and the case is done. More recently, in the past 5 years, it has been my experience that judges want both parties to go to avoid fraud and to be absolutely certain that what has been filed with the court truly is what it purports to be. If you do not meet the criteria for a simplified dissolution of marriage, you must file a regular petition for dissolution of marriage, which could, of course, be a petition for uncontested dissolution if your attorney actually wants to help you and actually wants to assist you in amicably resolving all of your issues fully and fairly and ethically. This is what qualifies as a simplified dissolution of marriage, which truly means, in essence, at its core, that everything has been divided, everything has been resolved, there's no alimony, there is probably no property, no assets, no liabilities, no minor children together. It's essentially, for those of you who haven't seen each other in 10 years, and now suddenly 10 years later, 5 years later, 20 years later, oops, you know what? Maybe it's time to get a divorce because I'm about to get remarried, or I'm about to buy property, or some major life changes happen, and I just remembered that I'm still married to you, pal, dear, darling, ex, former LOL, not laughing out loud, love of my life. This has been another episode of the Best Florida Family Law Podcast. My name is Attorney Jonathan Jacobs. Thank you for joining us again. I hope that some of this information has been educational and informational. It is not intended as legal advice, does not create an attorney-client relationship, and our goal here is to educate, inform, and entertain. Stay safe out there, everyone. We're going to be monitoring the storm like everybody else here in Central Florida. Wishing everybody safety, no property damage at all, and some way, somehow, good quality time with your family as these next few days unfold.